It is a very specific type of neighborhood experience.
Hmm.
You are out for a walk, maybe walking the dog, and you look over at a neighbor's yard, or, well, maybe you are just looking at your own front yard.
Right.
And suddenly, everywhere you look, the grass is covered in these little, ugly dirt cylinders.
Mm.
They look like someone took a tiny apple core to the entire earth.
Yeah, that is exactly what it looks like.
They're scattered all across the grass. They get stuck to the bottom of your shoes. They crumble on the sidewalk. And honestly, the immediate reaction most of us have is just, well, that looks incredibly messy.
It is entirely counterintuitive visually. I mean, we spend so much time and resources trying to curate these pristine, smooth, green spaces.
Oh, exactly. People obsess over their lawns.
Right. And then suddenly there's this deliberate introduction of chaos. But that visual mess on the surface is actually masking one of the most elegant, highly coordinated biological events that can happen in a localized ecosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that biological event, that is our mission today. We're looking at a stack of sources for this deep dive, which includes a detailed 30-day biological breakdown, a localized lawn transformation guide, and a strategic manual on autumn lawn care.
It is a really fascinating stack of information.
It really is. And we are going to look past those surface aesthetics today. We are unpacking the hidden, surprisingly dramatic biological transformation that happens right beneath our feet after a lawn is aerated.
Because it is dramatic.
It really is. Those messy little plugs are actually the starting pistol for an entire 30-day underground awakening.
And, framing it as an awakening is vital here, because to truly understand the science of why this exact moment triggers a biological ecosystem reset, we have to recognize what was happening before.
Right, before the holes get punched.
Exactly. Before those holes are punched, the soil is essentially entirely dormant. In many cases, it is actively suffocating.
Suffocating, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
And since we are sitting here in late July of 2026, understanding this process right now is perfectly timed.
Definitely.
If you are looking out at your yard wondering why the grass looks a bit tired despite all the watering, this timeline we are about to explore is exactly what you need to know heading into the fall season.
It is the perfect time to plan for it.
But before we get to the magic of what happens over those 30 days, we have to talk about the villain of this story. We have to understand what the soil was suffering from in the first place.
Right. We have to look at the invisible suffocation occurring just inches below the grass blades. The core problem here is soil compaction.
Okay, compaction.
Yes, and the sources highlight regions like Charlotte, North Carolina as a prime example.
Because of the clay.
Exactly, because they are built on dense Piedmont clay. Clay soils are naturally prone to this, but, really any soil profile can suffer from compaction over time.
So what exactly is happening down there?
Well, it is a slow, gradual compression of the Earth's architecture. To visualize it, think of healthy soil as a sponge full of tiny microscopic air pockets.
Okay, a sponge. I can picture that.
Compaction is basically the process of slowly stepping on that sponge until all those little air pockets completely collapse.
And the sources list the culprits for this, which turns out to be, well, almost everything we do.
Pretty much, yeah.
It is basic foot traffic from kids playing. It is heavy lawn equipment rolling over the exact same paths every single week.
Even heavy rainfall physically beating down on the dirt contributes to it. Or construction activity.
While even rain.
Yeah, over time, every step, every tire, every raindrop is slowly packing those clay particles tighter and tighter together.
And that causes the suffocation.
Exactly. The physical pressure increases what we call the bulk density of the soil. It literally forces the soil plates to align tightly.
Right.
And in doing so, it squeezes out the most critical components of a healthy root zone, the macropores and micropores.
Those are the air pockets you mentioned.
Yes. Those tiny, invisible voids between the dirt particles are where the biological life of the soil actually happens. When those voids collapse, capillary action fails.
So the soil just locks up.
The entire soil matrix essentially locks up, yes.
Wait, I have to push back on a massive misconception here. Because if a lawn is struggling, looking thin or yellowing, the immediate reaction for most homeowners is, doesn't it just need more fertilizer?
Oh, that is the most common reaction, absolutely.
Right, like, let's just buy a bag of nutrients and feed it. But I love this analogy we were discussing earlier.
The force-feeding one.
Yeah. Based on these sources, pouring fertilizer onto deeply compacted clay soil is literally like trying to feed someone who is currently holding their breath.
It really is.
I mean, they are suffocating.
Yeah.
It does not matter how good the food is if they are deprived of oxygen.
And the biological mechanics back that analogy up completely. fertilizer is utterly useless if the roots cannot function.
Because they need the air.
Yes. Roots do not passively absorb nutrients like a dry towel soaking up a spill.
Right.
Nutrient absorption is an active biological process.
Right.
It requires energy in the form of ATP. And to generate ATP, the root cells must undergo cellular respiration.
Which means they need to breathe.
Fundamentally, yes. It requires oxygen. Without a constant supply of air in those tiny soil voids, roots cannot efficiently produce energy. They cannot grow.
Wow.
They cannot absorb those expensive nutrients you just spread, and they cannot repair damage from heat or disease.
So the grass is literally starving while sitting on a buffet of nitrogen and potassium, all just because it cannot breathe.
Exactly. It creates this cascading system failure. Because the soil is so densely packed, when you try to water the lawn or when it rains, the water just cannot penetrate the surface.
It just runs off.
Right, it just pools up and runs off down the driveway. The roots become stunted, retreating to the top half-inch of soil, trying to find any available air.
Which makes them even more vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable to drought, yes. The entire system just stagnates. This raises an important question, though.
What happens the very second we punch holes in that suffocating barrier?
Exactly.
Well, wait, before we get to the reaction,
Yeah.
I have to clarify the mechanics of punching those holes. Because if the soil is made of dense clay and you drive a heavy aerator machine over it to punch holes, doesn't shoving metal spikes into the earth just push the clay tighter against the sides of the holes?
That is a very good question.
Right? Like, it seems like it would just create tiny, highly compacted walls. How does that relieve pressure?
Well, that is a crucial distinction to make. What you are describing is called spike aeration,
Oh, a spike aeration.
which is when solid metal tines are driven into the earth, and you are entirely correct. Spike aeration actually worsens compaction.
Wait, really? It makes it worse.
Yes, because it displaces the soil laterally, packing it tighter into the sidewalls of the hole. But the sources we are looking at specifically mandate core aeration.
Core aeration. Got it.
This utilizes hollow tines. So instead of just pushing the soil aside, it physically extracts a cylindrical mass of earth, the plug, and pulls it completely out of the ground.
Oh, okay.
By physically removing mass from the soil profile, you give the surrounding earth the physical space to expand, decompress, and sort of cave slightly inward.
So you are actually removing volume, which allows the rest of the soil to relax into the empty space. That makes much more sense.
Exactly.
Which takes us right into day one of the timeline, moving from this terrible problem of suffocation directly into the immediate biological reaction of the soil taking its first breath.
Yes, day one is the gateway. The moment those thousands of soil plugs are removed by the core aerator, you are not just making holes.
What are you making?
You are creating thousands of miniature gateways that directly connect the atmosphere above to the root zone beneath. The impenetrable clay barrier is broken.
That is a great way to picture it.
Instead of water and air just sitting on top of the surface, they have a direct 3-inch physical channel deeper into the soil profile.
And the sources describe what happens next, moving into week one, as an oxygen rush.
An oxygen rush, yes.
We are talking about air moving down into these newly created channels, filling up the voids that the aerator just carved out.
And in that first week, as the oxygen permeates the sidewalls of those newly created channels, we see what the sources call the microbial wake-up.
The microbial wake-up. I love that term.
To understand why this matters, we have to look at the microbiology. In that compacted, oxygen-poor soil, beneficial soil microorganisms do not actually die off entirely.
No, they don't.
No. Instead, they shift away from aerobic respiration, slowing down significantly into a dormant, low-energy state. The environment is simply too hostile for rapid metabolism.
So they are essentially hibernating just to survive.
Exactly. But the sudden influx of oxygen through those aeration gateways acts as a primary catalyst. Oxygen is the missing electron acceptor in their cellular respiration.
So the moment it hits.
Their metabolic rates spike exponentially. It is a biological alarm clock.
Wow.
And once their metabolism speed up, they immediately begin secreting enzymes to break down organic matter. They start decomposing old, dead roots.
Just getting right to work.
Yes. They aggressively eat away at the fash layer, that thick woven mat of dead grass stems that sits on the soil surface and suffocates the crown of the plant.
Right.
They also begin mineralizing old nutrient residues that have just been sitting locked in the soil, converting them into forms the grass can actually use.
They are the ultimate underground cleanup crew, and they have just been given the oxygen they need to clock in for their shift.
Perfectly said.
What I find so fascinating about this first week is that If you are standing on your porch looking out at the yard, you will not see this.
Not at all.
You are still just looking at a lawn covered in dirt plugs. I mean, you might notice that after a rainstorm, the water actually penetrates the ground better.
Right, less runoff.
But the most critical biological work is happening entirely out of sight.
It really is a profound shift from a stagnant system to a highly active one, all driven by the reintroduction of one simple element.
Oxygen. Okay, so moving into week 2. Once the microbes start clearing the thatch and the soil has physical room to decompress, how do the grass roots actually respond?
Well, for months or maybe even years, these grass roots have been fighting against dense, unyielding clay. Every millimeter of growth required massive energy expenditure just to push the soil aside.
It sounds exhausting for the plant.
It is, but now they have these freshly loosened spaces, the roots respond rapidly, they stop fighting the compaction and begin growing directly into the newly opened voids and the decompressed soil surrounding them.
And the sources clarify a really important distinction here, which I didn't know. They do not just grow deeper into the ground like a single carrot root.
No, they don't.
They branch outward laterally.
And that lateral branching is where the real resilience is built. By growing into the aeration holes and the loosened surrounding soil, the root system creates thousands of new microscopic root tips.
Wait, why does the number of tips matter more than just having a few really deep roots?
Because the root tips, specifically the microscopic root hairs near the tip, are the primary sites for water and nutrient absorption. So more root tips mean a massively expanded surface area interacting with the soil matrix. Mathematically, every single new root tip increases that individual grass plant's ability to pull moisture from the soil via capillary action.
So it drinks better.
Exactly. It drastically increases the plant's drought resistance and its ability to survive environmental stress.
It is building resilience from the bottom up. And it is not just the grass and the microscopic bacteria getting in on the action either.
No, it's a whole ecosystem.
Right. The sources point out that macroorganisms, specifically earthworms, start moving through this newly loosened soil too.
Yes. Earthworms are highly sensitive to soil compaction and oxygen levels. When the soil is aerated and when those awakened microbes start breaking down the thatch into rich organic matter, the earthworms move in to feed.
They smell the buffet.
Exactly. And as they travel through the decompressed soil, they create secondary horizontal microchannels.
Oh, so they're doing their own little aeration.
Yes. Furthermore, the mucilage they leave behind helps bind soil particles together into small aggregates, which permanently improves the soil structure.
Wow, it really is a compounding effect.
It is. The artificial holes encourage the earthworms, and the earthworms organically continue the aeration process.
It is an entire ecosystem synergizing.
Absolutely.
But, okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. By week 3, we still have those ugly dirt cylinders sitting on top of the grass.
The plugs.
Yeah. We started this whole deep dive by talking about how messy they look. But I was reading this section and I started thinking of them like little biological care packages.
That is a great way to look at it.
Or like slow-release compost tea bags that someone just conveniently dropped all over the yard.
You are spot on. The sources literally describe these plugs as small packages of beneficial microbes and organic material.
Because it came from the root zone.
Right. When the aerator pulled them from deep within the root zone, it brought all that concentrated organic matter, clay, and microbial life to the surface. It flips the soil profile.
And then nature just does the work for you.
Yes. Every time it rains, every time the irrigation system runs, or even just when you run the mower over them, those plugs are physically weathering and breaking apart.
And what happens is they break apart.
Well, as they break down, those awakened microbes are actively decomposing the thatch layer contained within the plug itself. All that rich organic material and the mineral clay are being naturally redistributed right back across the surface of the soil.
That is amazing.
It is a vital part of nutrient cycling. As these plugs decompose, they are inoculating the top layer of the earth with increased microbial populations.
So they are essentially top-dressing the lawn with its own biological material.
Exactly. Improving the soil structure on the surface without requiring you to apply any immediate chemical or synthetic interventions. Nature does the work.
The very thing that looked like a mess on day 1 is actually the medicine healing the lawn by week 3.
Yes.
But when that composting cycle finishes around day 30, does the soil just settle back into dense clay? I mean, what happens in week 4?
Well, the sources describe this as establishing a new baseline.
A new baseline. Okay.
By the 30th day, the visual evidence of the process is largely gone. The vast majority of those visible dirt plugs have broken down completely and melted back into the turf canopy.
So to the untrained eye, the lawn looks, quote unquote, back to normal.
Right. But underneath, the measurable metrics of the soil have fundamentally shifted.
What exactly is shifting in the data?
First, the root zone now contains a significantly higher percentage of macropores, those larger air spaces we discussed earlier.
Right. The sponge has its holes back.
Exactly. And because of this, water infiltration rates are drastically higher. Instead of surface tension holding water at the top, gravity can easily pull rainfall past the evaporation zone and deep into the root system.
That makes total sense.
The physical compaction of the clay is reduced, providing permanent physical space for lateral root growth. And, as we tracked in week 2, those root systems are now vastly expanded.
With thousands of new tips actively drawing in resources.
Yeah.
So the soil architecture is stronger, so the roots are stronger. And these improvements do not just vanish after month 1. This new baseline continues to benefit the lawn for the rest of the growing season.
Because the ecosystem is awake and functioning the way it was biologically designed to.
Right.
It is a structural improvement to the soil, at least until the slow, inevitable process of compaction begins again over the following years.
Yeah.
But knowing what happens during this 30-day awakening is only half of the equation. To truly utilize this science, we have to discuss the strategy of application.
So what does this all mean for the listener? If this process is so transformative, why does the timing matter?
Timing is critical.
Right. I mentioned earlier that we are having this conversation in late July. If I have compacted soil right now and the grass is suffocating, why wouldn't I just punch the holes today and let it breathe?
Because we are dealing with biological organisms that are highly sensitive to temperature and environmental stress. The sources are definitive on this. Late August through September is considered the absolute optimal window for core aeration, particularly in areas dealing with heavy clay compaction like Charlotte.
Why is that window so specific, though?
What's fascinating here is you are trying to maximize two different, often competing biological goals simultaneously.
Okay, what is the first goal?
First, you want to encourage rapid root development and maximize the microbial breakdown of thatch.
Right.
And for those processes to run at peak efficiency, you need warm soil temperatures. Because soil holds on to heat, the ground remains very warm well into September.
Oh, I see.
It acts like an incubator, keeping the microbes highly active and the roots growing aggressively.
So the ground is still nice and warm. But if the ground is warm in July, why not do it then?
That brings us to the second goal, minimizing stress on the grass plant itself.
Your canopy.
Exactly. If you severely disrupt the root zone in the middle of July, when the air temperatures are scorching and the plant is already expending massive amounts of energy just trying to transpire and cool itself.
It's already stressed out.
Yes. The physical trauma of severing roots with an aerator can send the plant into shock. It can cause way more harm than good.
Yikes. Okay.
But in late August and September, the diurnal temperature shifts change. You still have warm days, but the nighttime air temperatures begin to cool down significantly.
So the cooler air gives the grass blades a break from the heat stress,
Exactly.
reducing the demand on the plant. But the deep soil is still acting like an incubator, keeping the roots and the microbes working in overdrive. That optimal temperature balance is brilliant.
It really creates the perfect environmental window for recovery and expansion. And it plays into a much larger long-term strategy.
How so?
When you trigger this 30-day awakening in the fall, you are not just thinking about how the lawn looks in October. You are giving the grass several months of prime, low-stress growing conditions.
To establish a thicker root system before winter.
An exponentially more resilient root system before it goes fully dormant, yes.
You are building the armor it needs for the future.
Because when next summer arrives, bringing extreme heat and drought conditions, your grass will have deep, expansive root systems capable of reaching water reserves and nutrients that a shallow, compacted lawn simply cannot access.
It is the ultimate preparation for a healthier lawn the following spring and summer.
Exactly.
Well, let's pull all of this together for you listening. We have journeyed through an incredibly detailed 30-day timeline. If you look out your window today, the core lesson here from all these sources is that a healthy environment is not built overnight.
No, it isn't.
And more importantly, as the sources clearly state, it does not happen by chance. It happens by choice. It is built from the ground up by prioritizing what happens below the surface rather than just treating the visual symptoms above it.
The foundational takeaway is recognizing oxygen as the true secret ingredient to the entire system. Without it, the biological machinery simply halts. The roots cannot produce energy, the microbes go dormant, and the soil locks up.
And those messy, ugly little dirt plugs scattered across the grass, they aren't a nuisance.
Not at all.
They are actually the visible signs of a thriving, healing ecosystem going to work for you. They are the concentrated care packages that nature uses to reset the balance and inoculate the surface.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the process of aeration teaches us a really fascinating lesson about growth and recovery.
What's that?
It shows us that sometimes you have to deliberately disrupt the surface. You have to be willing to create temporary messes, like a yard full of dirt plugs, in order to relieve built-up pressure and foster deep foundational growth.
Right.
You cannot just endlessly smooth over a compacted surface and expect life to thrive beneath it.
You have to break the surface to let the ecosystem breathe. Which leaves me thinking, if simply extracting a few tiny cores of earth to let oxygen in can completely revitalize a suffocating, compacted ecosystem, it makes you wonder what other tightly packed, quote-unquote, compacted systems in our natural environment, or even in our own daily routines, are slowly suffocating just because they don't have the space to breathe.
That is a very powerful thought.
Something to think about next time you see those dirt plugs on a neighborhood lawn. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep digging deeper.
Thank you for listening to the Pain in the Grass podcast, sponsored by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte, Huntersville, your go-to name in turf care for homeowners and businesses seeking beauty, quality, and reliability, powered by family and fueled by passion. Until next time, make sure to take care of that pain in the grass.